What's up? What's up? What's up? Nick from P2W Fantasy. One last mock draft. That's what I got going on right now. One last mock draft. So today I have a final home league draft. I'm hosting in the garage. Have a setup. My jerseys are missing from behind me right now because of that home league draft. But yeah, I figured some other people might be on the same boat, still having that last draft. And I've done a handful of other mock drafts in the past, the last few weeks, just getting, some perspective on different positionings that people might have in their, mock drafts. So what I got going on today, we'll go to Fantasy Pros again, graded mock draft. And keep in mind with these graded mock drafts that it's based off of Fantasy Pros rankings and projections. So, they don't necessarily align with my personal rankings and projections. I'm sure they don't align with everybody else's, but it'll be interesting to see after this mock draft what sort of grade we are going to get. So to set things up, we'll do the 2021 season. We'll go PPR. We'll go a snake. We'll say we have 12 people in our league. And I've done the 1 spot. I've done the 2 spot before. We're going to go all the way to the 12 spot. I like this spot to a degree because personally, you get to go back to back. On the flip side, I'm massively impatient. So having to wait all those picks for it to come back to me, I get a little restless in my drafts, but I think I'm just an impatient person to begin with. So it is what it is. I know we'll have to wait and see what falls to us. But again, I really like that back-to-back picks versus having to juggle between 2 guys. So we'll go with a standard sort of maybe a home league setup where you have a 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end. We'll go with 1 flex, 1 defense, 1 kicker. And we won't do any bench spots. Let's just fill the team and see what kind of grade we can get here. Just pretty straightforward. And hopefully we have some perspectives for why we are picking certain players here. So let's see how this goes. All right, so the draft wizards spitting out the picks now. Christian McCaffrey was right off the board, obviously, but then it took a little bit after that. So, I typically like to go running back for drafts. Flipping around here, if you look at these 3 guys right here, these are right after Devontae Adams for me. The order I would put them is Diggs, and then I juggle Tyreek Hill and Calvin Ridley. I think I have Ridley at 4, Diggs at 2, so that might not be a bad pick there. Jonathan Taylor, some people are kind of off on this season for whatever reason. Could be, the changes in the offense, maybe being worried about Hines. I'm not entirely sure. A lot of people are super high on Antonio Gibson as well. Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon. I'm not a Joe Mixon guy at all. I've talked about that before. I kind of want to go running back here just because I feel like by the time in this draft that it comes back to me at that 12 spot, the running back room is going to be completely depleted where I might miss out on the top end wide receivers, but there's so many left. It's the deepest of all positions. So that's my thinking there. I mean, I could have 1 strong running back, 1 strong wide receiver. That might not be a bad idea too. But I think just because of the depth of the position, I'm going to have to go running back. Really love Swift down there. I think I might go elsewhere though, especially looking at some projections here. Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler literally went the 2 picks before me, so I probably would have liked to have one of those 2 guys. I think that would have been more ideal. I think it would have made me more comfortable. But let's go running back here. Just again because of the depth of the position, I'm gonna go Jonathan Taylor, and then I'm gonna go Nick Chubb. And a lot of people will say, well, Antonio Gibson, why not take him there? I just think based off of what we saw to Nick Chubb this past season, how efficient he was as a scorer, the yards per carry, everything was massively insane. He was super efficient despite missing a handful of weeks. I mean, being a top 12 guy after missing those games just says enough. I like Swift. I'm higher than Swift and then consensus, but for the sake of this mock draft, maybe I can use one of these two guys for Swift plus later. So that can be my thinking there as well. So let's go JT, and we'll go Nick Chubb. And again, depth of the position, we'll go that route. All right. So, I usually tend to target Darren Waller in these mock drafts. Obviously, he was off the board. Wide receiver wise, still a lot of good guys here. Guys that are probably candidates for somewhere between 12 and 20. A lot of these guys here. I don't want to go quarterback. I think we can wait. You can see Kyler still on the board, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. These are three guys that can all finish as the best quarterback in fantasy. So why make that move right now? Still some decent running backs as well. So I am going to, for this, I talked about Swift before, massively high in Swift. I said I, might have thought about taking him if I wanted to reach on him and maybe trade up for him later. But sometimes when you take the guys that have the higher ADP, then the guys that you wanted to reach for can drop later. So that's a good way of thinking when it comes to doing these drafts. You might want to reach, but if you wait, you can either trade for them later or they might fall to you. So I'm going to make my team running back heavy here and just see how things go. I'm going to take DeAndre Swift there. And then out of the wide receivers, I guess it comes down to who do I feel has the best chance of being a top 12 guy out of these guys. I love DJ Moore. I really do. Chris Godwin, I haven't been high on, but you can't deny the fact that he can be efficient and effective with his targets. And I'm not even really an Amari Cooper guy, in all honesty, but when I look at the group, I think the guy who has the highest potential to be a top 12 guy, it's got to be Amari Cooper. I mean, Mike Evans was right outside of that or right around that last season. But again, there's a lot of targets to go around in Tampa. I think both Godwin and Mike Evans can be top 20, but Amari Cooper, I think, is just the safer route there. All right, so looking at our team right now, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper. Do we have DeAndre Swift as our flex? We don't need another running back. That's out of the question right now to fill this team. All right, so right now I'm looking at the tight end room, and the tight end position is very important. Travis Kelce is in his own tier by himself. I have after him Darren Waller, George Kittle. Then I have, I believe, Pitts, Hockenson, Andrews. So Hockenson right now, even just looking at the projected points, projected 192 from Fantasy Pros. And then we have 167, 164, 154. So there's nearly a 30-point drop-off. So a 20-something point drop-off here between Hockenson and Logan Thomas and Noah Fant. And I think that's fair. I think TJ Hockenson has the potential to have over 100 targets. He can probably have somewhere between I don't know, 120 maybe targets. It could be the most targeted player on the Detroit Lions. And for me, when I'm juggling my tight ends, that's my number one. Who has the potential for the highest volume? I don't want to bank on yardage. I don't want to bank on touchdowns. I want to bank on a guy who's going to have consistent target volume. And that to me is going to be TJ Hockenson. So that's an easy pick for me right there, especially looking at the rest of these guys who can be good for fantasy, but I think there's a clear drop-off between Hockenson and these guys here. So he's in his own tier in comparison to those guys. Now it comes down to a couple sophomores. OBJ's back in the mix. Juju, not a Robbie Anderson guy, just in all honesty. And it comes down to who do I feel can score the most points out of maybe these three sophomores here. So with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chase Claypool, that touchdown number might go down, but he's still going to be important to this offense. The athletic ability is there. Deontay Johnson, for me, it's the clear-cut wide receiver one, and I talked about it yesterday on the stream with my buddy Kevin, but Deontay Johnson is back with the same quarterback as last year, and I think the target volume is going to be the same for Deontay Johnson. So Chase Claypool is going to be fighting with this guy down here, Juju, for the wide receiver 2. Both guys can still be very good for fantasy. Brandon Ayuk did great for fantasy last year, had a lot of big games. My concerns are going to be this juggle of 2 different quarterbacks at some point, which may or may not be an actual concern, but it's going to be a factor for the playbook. And then 2, Ayuk had some massive games last year, but with Debo only in one of those games and Kittle in none of them. So my questions are, where does Ayuk stand when all 3 of these guys are healthy? Could he be the most targeted guy for the 49ers? I guess he could. My bet when all 3 are healthy is that George Kittle is the focus of the passing attack. But with all 3 in the mix, I'm not comfortable with Ayuk knowing that the 49ers love to pound the rock. They love to run the ball. So I go to the guy who I think my buddy John's been paying attention to this mock here. I've been trying to get Judy in as many leagues as possible. Judy, without looking at any sort of notes, Jerry Judy was my wide receiver 1 out of that past draft class. The route running, the ability with the ball in his hands. He's actually got some nice speed on him as well. He was super productive at Alabama. He scored in almost all of his last 28 games for them. He had a high target volume there. Last season, only Justin Jefferson out of the rookies had more targets in the rookie draft class than Jerry Judy. And Jerry Judy dealt with 4 different quarterbacks. He dealt with a terrible off passing rate, or whatever the actual metric is for that. And I truly believe that Jerry Judy is going to be that next guy who has the year 2 breakout. I listed guys yesterday such as DK Metcalf, Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins. Those are all guys who had a huge jump from their freshman to their sophomore year. And I think it's going to be Jerry Judy. So even though Ayuk is projected more points, so is OBJ, so is Robbie Anderson, so is Juju, I like Jerry Judy this season. And although it might not be what the best projected player is according to Fantasy Pros, I'm going with my own gut, my own rankings, my own feelings. So that's going to be Jerry Judy. Sorry for the rant about Jerry Judy. So we still want to fill one more wide receiver position here. Again, the depth of the position is there. All the guys that are going to be available to us here, all are guys that can be effective for fantasy. Debo, I get concerned about him being banged up often, and then for the same reasons I just talked about with Ayuk. Robbie Anderson had a great season last year. I think people are over projecting him with Sam Darnold as if, them 2 were connected at the hip in New York. I think the last season they played together, he was not the primary target. I actually think DJ Moore is going to step back into that primary target position. Corey Davis looks good in camp. He looks really good. He looks like he's getting connected well with rookie Zach Wilson. I like Visca, and I think Urban Meyer is going to really like Visca, but I feel like I don't have to take him right now. I'm high on Brandon Cooks, and a lot of people are not, but the guy has been a top 17 wide receiver outside of his concussion year for most of his career, despite whoever the quarterback was. So it might be the worst quarterback he's going to play with, whether it's Taylor or Mills, but you gotta go sometimes with a guy who's going to be a wide receiver 1 clearly on his team. But let's take a look elsewhere real quick. So Tannehill, Jalen Hurts, Matt Stafford, Joe Burrow. Can most of these guys finish inside the top 12 for the position? Sure. I'm going to look at my own rankings really quick. So out of those guys, I actually have Jalen Hurts the highest. I have Jalen Hurts at 8, and I have Ryan Tannehill right after at 9, Stafford at 12, and Joe Burrow at 13. So not super far from each other, but I think it's time for me to take a quarterback in this position. And I'm going to go with the guy who I feel like has the highest ceiling out of all these guys. Dual threat ability, massive rushing ceiling. And also they added some guys to his system to make him hopefully more effective. Hopefully Ertz and Goddard provide a safety blanket across the middle. Rieger hopefully improves in year 2. Devonta Smith, I think, is an absolute stud. We're going to have to go with Jalen Hurts here. And it might be spicy to take him over Ryan Tannehill, who is going to be great for fantasy, but I got to go with the guy with the highest ceiling right now, and that's Jalen Hurts. All right, we got to fill that wide receiver spot. So Who am I going to go with here? I'm going to go with the clear-cut wide receiver one on his team, who's going to have probably the highest amount of targets between all these guys here, and I'm going to go with Brandon Cooks, even though it's not the hottest of picks due to what's going on there. So we'll just fill our the rest of our team here. We got to get a defense. We have to get a kicker. Again, if this was a normal draft with a bunch of bench slots, I'm probably going to, start grabbing elsewhere. But just for the sake of getting a grade here, just for the sake of filling our team, we will fill these last two spots. And I have the last two picks here. So I think the Patriots defense, having some guys back in, some guys healthy, are going to do good things. Broncos, Chiefs have improved their defense the last few years. I'm going to go with Miami, though. I think they added a few guys. They added a safety, I know that, to their defense, and they were already pretty stellar this past season. I know Cleveland's got some good players as well, some heavy power, especially with Myles Garrett and some of those other guys. But I like Miami. I like the fact that they didn't have to rely on their offense this past season, and then they added even more to their defense. So everybody's pretty much projected similar here. I mean, everybody's somewhere between 106 and I guess 101, but most of these teams are 106, 105, 104. It is what it is, but I'm going to go with the one that I feel the most comfortable taking, and that's going to be the Miami Dolphins here. So I'm going to go with their defense. And we'll go with the kicker. Who will be our kicker? I got to go with my 101, which is Tyler Bass. He is my 101. He's going to be a sophomore. He had a good rookie season with the Buffalo Bills. I think the Buffalo Bills are going to score a lot of offensive points this year. I guess points don't need to be offensive, but they're going to score a lot of points. He was great in his rookie season. He's going to be better in his sophomore season. These other guys were solid as well. Big Z. He's getting older and older, but he still is pretty much staying the same. Might lose a little bit of his efficiency as the years go on. But yeah, let's go with the sophomore here, the kid, Tyler Bass, and we'll see what our grade is. C+. At the end of the day, though, I think I'll take it. What I would have changed looking back is that, I took Swift as my flex. Maybe I would go with somebody who would have a elevated point projection for the sake of the grade. Maybe I would have taken another wide receiver that maybe had a higher ceiling than Swift does. But if it was a normal draft and I had a bunch of bench slots, I'd probably still take Swift. And then on the bench, I'd go grab some guys with high upside. And then if I can plug them in, I'll plug them in when I need to. But again, that's a good way of me personally attacking my bench, is looking for high upside players and attacking each position from there for the bench slot. So hopefully I had some decent reasonings here. The grades, it's my worst grade in the last few weeks here. Not a good way to end it, but I feel comfortable with a lot of those picks there. And I kind of reached a little bit on some of those guys, and it kind of is what it is when it comes to your own personal preference. But good luck this season, guys, with your drafts, with your dynasty leagues, your redraft leagues. Hit me up with any questions, and be prepared for a shit ton of content, because that's what you're going to get out of me. Happy Monday.